A few days ago, I went to a Macys store
This is
near my
added
house
to the other
to
video
go
I
check
did.
out some
I just
jewelry.
accidentally cut
While
it
my
out.
mom was checking out jewelry, I noticed an old man around his 50s come near us. He was about 8 feet from us. At first, I thought he was just a random customer checking something out for his lady or something. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed he was just standing there without moving and looking at us. It made me feel uncomfortable, so I turned around, moving the stroller, which my toddler was in, because I didn't want him looking at my baby. I turned my eyes to look at him again, and I could see that he was just staring at me with a creepy look. He was staring at me and my baby. Then, all of a sudden, he grinned widely at us. The weirdest thing about him was that he was wearing women's shoes and a scarf, and also holding a dress in his hand. He opened his mouth and tried to say something. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I could read his lips. I like you. I like your baby. I just thought the man was a weirdo. And then my mom also noticed that he was odd and creepy. He saw that my mom was glaring at him, so he walked away. But then he appeared on the opposite side of us and started staring at me again. This time he pulled his phone out and made it seem like he was about to take a picture. He was staring at us and his eyes opened widely. He was smiling like a crazy psychopath. That was enough. I wanted to go up to him and tell him to get away from us, but I had my boy with me and didn't want anything to happen, so I chose to just get out of there. I told a lady who was working there what happened. She said that she would go take a look at him. A few minutes later, she came back and told us that he was a customer who has been reported before by other people. My mom asked, "Why hasn't he been kicked out then?" The lady said, "Well, because he hasn't threatened or hurt anyone, so the store doesn't have a good enough reason to kick him out." My mom and I were pissed off because obviously the man is just there to harass people. The lady then told us that he said something creepy to her and also made her uncomfortable. She told us that when she went to go ask him what he was up to, he told her that he went to the store to return a dress. He decided that he didn't like that he'd bought it for his lady. He told her with a smile, "Yeah, I need to change quickly because she's cold now." My mom and I instantly felt so creeped out, so we just left. What did that mean? Could he have been hiding a dead body back at his place? A few days later, and I feel relieved that the crazy guy didn't harm us. But I'm still wondering what he meant by, "She's cold now."
No.
Stop cussing, dude.
I'm sorry. Please don't.
I'm sorry. It's my camera. Something's wrong with my camera.
In the summer of 2017, when I was 10 years old,
Bro.
my older brother and I
nasty,
had a
dude.
babysitter, and she was around the age of 17. Since my mom was home on Tuesdays, the babysitter would come on all the weekdays. Most days when she babysat, we would go to the neighborhood pool, hang out, and eat lunch there. Then we went back home and my mom would arrive a bit later at around 5:30 in the evening. On one Thursday, the day was just an ordinary one, and the babysitter came around 8 in the morning. A few hours later, we decided to head to the pool and eat lunch. We all got ready and headed out the door. As I used to be a little paranoid back then, every time I went outside, I made sure I locked the door and would immediately turn the doorknob and try to open it to make sure it was locked. The door was definitely locked, so we walked to the pool and swam for a while. Then we ate lunch and decided to head back to the house. When we got home,
You
I
want it
pulled
closer
out
to
the
the
key from my
TV.
bag, but I noticed that the door was a crack open. I pushed it, and the door swung open. A little chill ran down my spine. as I remembered that I made sure the door was locked before leaving. My babysitter had a frightened look on her face too. But my stupid brother thought nothing of it and just walked right in, so we followed him. About my house, when you walk into the house, to the right is an entryway to the living room, and straight ahead is a hallway to the kitchen. The stairs are to the right of the hallway, and you can see the upstairs railing from the entrance. We walked into the kitchen and set our stuff down, and I went to go lock the door. After I shut it, I turned back around to go back to the kitchen, but something caught my attention at the corner of my eye. Looking up at the railing, I could see the silhouette of someone crouched behind a tall, narrow floor fan. I looked a little closer, and I could see their eyes. They were wide open and were staring directly at me. I was frozen in fear and couldn't move. All I could do was stare back at them, not knowing if it was a man or woman. My babysitter called for me to come to the kitchen, and the figure slowly walked into a nearby room and disappeared. I ran into the kitchen, telling my babysitter and brother what I saw. At first, they didn't believe me, but then, all of a sudden, we were all silent as we heard slow footsteps creaking from upstairs. She grabbed both her phone and a kitchen knife and ushered us to the back door. She slowly turned the doorknob and tried to not make any noise while opening the door. We made it to the backyard, and she was going to call 911 on her phone. But before she could, we heard a tapping sound coming from one of the windows on the second floor. So we all looked up, and then we saw him. He was a man, late 50s, short black hair, eyes still wide open, staring at us. He was pushing the blinds out of the way, so we saw his face very clearly. We screamed and started running to the gate on the side of the backyard. The babysitter dropped her phone while scared, so I picked it up and ran behind her. I dialed 911, told them our address, and explained to the operator what just happened. She said they would be there in a few minutes, told us to go to a nearby neighbor's house and stay there until the cops arrived. We rang a doorbell a few times, and one of our neighbors, who was retired, came outside. He let us in, and we explained what happened as we were looking out of the window. Then we saw 3 cop cars pulling up, and the cops were surrounding my home. 3 cops headed in through the front door and investigated our house. We went outside to tell them that we were okay, and the other police officers started questioning us. Soon the cops came back after finding nothing and doing a thorough investigation. They told us it would be best to not stay home, as the person may come back. So the babysitter said we could go to her house, which is about a mile away. Just then, we heard our neighbors screaming from down the street. A few houses down, a policeman's car was set on fire and was smoking out. The cops spotted a man running past the corner down towards the end of the street. One officer took us to the babysitter's house, while the other 3 went after that man. We later found out that the man had gotten away, so he never got arrested. Our parents arrived home as they were contacted by the police and freaked out. Later that night, we came back to the house and we searched the whole place to see if anything was missing. A cash box that was stored in my parents' bedroom was missing, but we didn't report it since the man was never found. I have no idea who that was or how he opened our front door. I still wonder to this day what would have happened if I never noticed the man. He could have done something to us while we were sleeping. I still feel uneasy sometimes when I'm home alone.
My God. Yeah, I'm
It all
sorry.
started one summer afternoon in August. My best friend Mike invited me to his house. Mike was the type of kid you'd call a nerd. He always got good grades, wore glasses, had freckles, and believed in things like dragons and magic.
Mhm.
One of Mike's favorite things to do was performing magic for me. Every time I'd come over, he'd perform magic. But this magic trick, though, would be the one that I'd never forget. When I got to Mike's house, he said, "I have a new magic trick to show you, and it's the best one."
Pops out his.
He grabbed my hand and we went into the living room where he had a large box in front of his family photo. It was all four of his family members in that picture: Mike, Josh, and his mom and dad. The box was about his size so we could fit in it, and his older brother Josh was standing next to it. So I sat down on a couch and Mike started introducing the name of his magic trick. It was called the Vanishing. Josh opened the door to the large box where nothing was inside, and Mike walked in.
No.
After Josh
Can you
closed the
trust?
door again, he then said some weird words and then yelled, "Poof!" Josh slowly opened the box, and Mike was no longer in it. However, I was in the 7th grade, so I was smart enough to know that under the box was a trap door so he could climb down out of it. So I looked down at the bottom of the box, but to my surprise, nothing was there. No door, no secret, no Mike. Just at that moment, my mom called and said that I need to come home right now. I said bye to Josh, grabbed my backpack, and yelled, "Nice trick, Mike. Gotta go." Everything was fine, just until the next day. The next day, Mike didn't invite me, but I thought of going to his house again. I ran up to his house, stood in front of the door, and rang the doorbell 3 times. His dad came out and said, "Oh, hello. Nice to meet you." He acted like that he'd never seen me before. It was weird, but I asked, "Good afternoon, sir. Is Mike home?" And I could see his confused face, and he answered, "Mike? Who is Mike?" I felt stupid at that moment, as if I had come to the wrong house. I then quickly asked, "Your son Mike? You have 2 sons." During explaining the situation, I felt irritated, so I pushed him to the side to get into the living room. "Josh," I said, pointing to the photo, and then my eyes widened. Mike wasn't in the photo. I was pointing to nothing, which would have been where Mike should be standing in that picture. I panicked, and I couldn't believe what was going on here. I then said, "You're your son, Mike. He has good grades, and he's good at magic." Oh, the box. I thought that everyone was playing a prank with me or something, but he looked extremely confused and even terrified. He looked at me as if I was some kind of lunatic. So I ran upstairs to check the box, and I opened the door thinking that I must be dreaming. The room was full of bookshelves and beanbags, all in a circle. It was just a cozy reading room. I was horrified. I kept saying, "No, it can't be," over and over. That moment, Josh came in the room. I thought, this is the last chance. I quickly took out my phone, thinking that I could remind Mike to them by showing selfies that I took with Mike before. However, just when I did, he was in none of the pictures. The one where I gave him a hug, where we went to the other friend's birthday party and took a picture with the clown, nothing was there. It was like he never even existed before. And I felt that moment was like a nightmare. To this day, there is literally no one who remembers Mike in my town. I still can't believe what happened to Mike, but I definitely believe that Mike is real. And he must be somewhere.
No, buddy.
My name is Kyla. This story is about a piano that was in my elementary school. When I was a kid, my friends and I used to record random videos in my school's basement. Most of the time, the basement's lights were off because hardly anyone lived there. And the reason was that place was scary and sometimes smelled really bad. The basement was completely dark. We slowly
Somebody
walked
grabbed
through the
you?
basement with our phone lights on. I was
phone lights
nervous,
on.
but my friends were already walking ahead of me,
Oh,
so
I
I
thought-
just followed them.
Oh, I thought she
We
said
were a
phone
group of
lights.
5, so I felt like I shouldn't be scared since I was with them. My friend Michael was in the front since he was the bravest and also the one recording on his phone. I was in the very back and holding onto my friend Kate's shirt. There was a room just beside the basement's wall, and inside of it was a grand piano.
I never
Nothing
seen that
else,
movie Lights Out.
only the piano. We went inside that room first.
Playing with the ghosts.
We were all
Stop
quiet,
playing with
and
them.
you could only hear our heavy
Playing with the
breathing
ghosts
as
gets
we
you killed.
walked through the basement. But we didn't hear
I've never
anything.
seen that movie
And
Lights
then,
Out.
out of nowhere, Michael said, "Boring." It took
Oh,
us
you
about
made a
10
ghost
minutes
mad.
to reach the end of the basement. Michael put his phone back in his pocket, and we all started walking back in the long basement. We finally returned to the main gate of our school and sat on a bench. Everyone was focused on Michael as he pulled out his phone and started playing the recording. It was quiet at first, and then all that could be heard were our whispers as we tried to figure out whether or not we should continue with the recording. And then all of our eyes widened when we heard a sound coming from what seemed like just beside the basement. We couldn't believe what we just heard, so we paused the video, rewinded it, and played it again.
Come on, man. Why'd you say boring? Boring. It's not boring. You could die. You could die at any moment, man.
We didn't say anything for a while. I'm 100%
Doing
positive
that.
that we didn't hear that piano playing as we walked through the
Don't be
basement.
messing with.
It
Hey,
was definitely
Sean,
quiet.
ain't like.
Damn,
The
where's the...
scariest thing was that the piano was still playing when Michael said,
Lights
"Boring."
Out.
The recording was around 3 minutes long, and when the recording was done playing, we were all speechless. This was many years ago, but to this day I still don't have an explanation for what happened. Maybe someone went to that room and played it, but if so, why couldn't we hear it while we were walking through the basement? We also didn't see anyone else down there.
Sean,
And
you
why
scared
did we
me,
only
bro.
hear it when we played the recording? I am still confused about that incident.
Bro, so
Happened in the middle of last year. At that time, I was at home with my
Alright, I'm gonna
boyfriend,
leave
Dan,
you,
watching TV.
Rashad, real quick, because I have to use the
Dan was
bathroom.
deeply concentrated on what the TV screen was showing. So I
I'll
was
just
about to
leave
start
y'all
making a
recording.
romantic
I
atmosphere.
need to go to the bathroom.
But then I heard a knock at the door. I got pretty pissed off as it interrupted, but got up anyway and opened the door. We lived with one of our friends.
What's
so
up,
at the
guys?
moment, I thought it would be my friend. But to my surprise, it was a man around the same age as me. He looked a little bit tired and was forcing a smile on his face. He was all sweating, and his eyes were red as if from crying. But it wasn't my business to ask. "Oh, hello," the stranger said with a wide smile, taking his hand out for me to shake. "Hi," I said, looking at his hand and back at him. "Can I use your bathroom, please?" he asked, still having this huge smile. on his
I'd
face.
say no.
Before I could say anything, though, Dan came behind me and told the guy that, indeed, he could use the bathroom.
Go back over
I
there.
went in there, and Dan and I just went back to the couch and waited.
Okay, I'm back.
Then I heard some sounds,
slap
like
him.
water pouring
How
in
you
the
gonna tell
bathtub.
somebody else they can use
After
the
10 minutes, I
bathroom?
slowly started to get curious as he didn't come out yet. I told Dan that I should check on him, but he told me to wait a little bit more. So, I just waited. 20 minutes later, he didn't come out. There was just silence.
He's
in the
ransacking your house. He's quietly
After
snuck
30
out.
minutes,
He started.
well, Dan decided that he'd check the bathroom. However, having a bad feeling, I went along with him just to be sure that nothing happened to him. "Hey, is everything all right?" I knocked at the door at the bathroom, but there was no response. I repeated the actions, but this time I knocked louder and yelled. Dan told me to wait a little longer, but I refused. I pressed on the handle of the door, expecting it to be locked, but to my surprise, it wasn't. I couldn't believe what I saw in front of me. To my horror, there was blood splattered on the floor everywhere, and the bathtub was filled up with a red liquid, as well with a lifeless body in it. The smell of blood filled the bathroom, and I wondered how I couldn't smell that outside. I told Dan to call 911 while I went over to the body.
You
to check his
idiot!
pulse.
They're gonna think you did
When I
it.
got closer to it, I noticed that a razor blade was shoved deep in his neck. He was just dead. After half an hour, the 911 arrived with the cops. They took his body and we had to give our report to the cops. To this day, I became more paranoid about a stranger. Especially, I'm positive that letting a stranger use your bathroom is not safe and just nonsense.
Yeah.
So, don't let the stranger come in. Ever.
Well, don't do it.
They could also be planning to kill you. What if they brought a gun
This
in their
happened to
bathroom?
me last summer.
They came out and shot
My
you.
best friend and I went to Ibiza for a week. Once we checked into our hotel on the first day, we threw our bags
I
in
know
our room
some
and
of
drove
y'all
our rented
like
car to the
this.
nearest supermarket.
That's just being nice.
On our way
You should
there,
be
we
nice.
talked about the hotel, which was located in the very old suburban part of the city. It was really dirty. It just had an overall weird vibe to it. My friend was really bummed out about it, but we agreed that it wasn't going to ruin our excitement for this trip. Later that night, around 3 a.m., after coming back from a club to the area where we stayed, we couldn't find our hotel. We were completely drunk and probably walked around the streets in circles. My friend laughed a lot, stopped, and then pointed at a tall garden fence. Through it, we saw the hotel building. It was right behind the garden, so without putting much thought into it, we tried to climb over the fence. My friend managed to succeed, but I fell and hurt my right leg quite a bit. He helped me up, and we stood in the middle of a bunch of green bushes. "What the?" my friend murmured all of a sudden. I looked up, and there were a bunch of tombstones. We were standing right between two walls, and at the end of the walls there was a small chapel.
You
The door
hop
was wide open,
into a
and from
graveyard.
a distance, we could see that it was full of lit up candles.
Nope.
I was about to ask my friend why the lights were on, but that drunk idiot suddenly started to laugh and walked toward the chapel with big, awkward steps. Due to my injured leg, I couldn't really catch up with him. I almost felt like puking, so I looked down for a moment, and when I looked up again, he was standing inside the chapel. I took a few more steps and stopped as I saw his face look completely gray. "What's wrong?" I asked, but he gave me no response. Suddenly, he raised his hand and signaled that I should back off and be quiet. He leaned his face a bit forward, as if he was trying to see something in the room.
Grab his face.
At that point, I was really scared. So I just took as many steps back as I could while still
So
looking.
just snatch his face inside of your dark.
Then
Like,
I heard something. The
Ah!
sound of footsteps, maybe 4 or 5 people, was directly in front of me. He immediately turned around and started to sprint as fast as he possibly could.
Bro, that animated run though. What was that? Dude, look at this. Rashad, look at this animated run.
So I just took as many steps back as I could while still looking at him. Then I heard something. The sound of footsteps, maybe 4 or 5 people, was directly in front of him. He immediately turned around and started to sprint as fast as he possibly could. Run, go!
My man's a sprint. See, running, bro.
And whoever was chasing me was yelling some words in Latin. My friend caught up to me just as I was about to climb the fence. He helped me out and gave me a push forward. The footsteps still right behind us. However, when we hit the ground on the other side of the fence and looked back between the bars into the green bushes, there was no one to be seen. No one to be
Bro, should I go
Bro, he ran so fast.
He was running like
Oh,
Prince.
Yeah, I gotta tell y'all about that. Did Rashad, my big brother, he got scared because a ladybug. He
My
moved so
friend
fast.
entered the lobby
No,
first,
that's not what
and as I
happened.
was just about to enter
Josh had a ladybug in my
I looked
hand.
back at the street we just
And
came from
it was
and saw
finna
5
fly
figures
because it was
standing in the
wind.
darkness.
And it was like
They wore
it
long
flew.
black clothes
And it flew.
and all stared directly at me.
Oh.
I got scared, so I immediately got in.
The
and went into
animated
my room.
face would be like,
Our hotel room was located on the 5th floor, so I looked down the window into the streets.
My hotel room is gonna be on the last floor. You know what?
good.
Because if they explode the bottom floor, you know
But
what
we
you're
never
gonna be
encountered
falling
anything
into?
similar.
A pit of flame.
Even
But if you're on the top,
We haven't talked
if
about
you're in the
this.
bottom, you're gonna be in that pit of flames already.
Oh no, nobody
No,
knows.
finger.
No.
The hands start coming through the bars. I'm Gucci, bro.
This happened about 4 years ago.
Oh.
In December
It happened
2015.
4 years ago.
Me and 5 of my friends have our own business
This happened
editing
4
photos and
years ago.
videos for social media content creators. And because of this, we tend to have a lot of spare time on our hands.
26
We
minutes.
used to go on road trips to a local lake that has a few nice spots to camp at, and a ski resort.
Are
We
you making
usually
a
went
video
there
right
on
now?
our days off.
Yes,
One
you
week,
did.
the
I
6
shut
of
up.
us finished all of our projects early, so we had a few days off. We decided to drive to
You
the
make a
lake.
video on your
I
Nintendo.
won't be using their real names for obvious
That's
reasons,
not how
so I'll call them
Nintendos
Kevin, Steven,
Oh yeah, I forgot you don't got a camera.
Katie
What's
and
up,
Brittany
suck?
rode in Katie's old sports car, and Steven and I rode on our
Oh,
motorcycles. Usually, Kevin and Josh took Steven to Jeep.
Bro,
You'd be
hands
Francine.
start coming out the
Shut
door.
up.
Bought a new Sprinter van,
My
which
bad,
the
Aaron.
previous owner
Just be
had
quiet real
converted
quick.
into
I'm
a
trying to talk to
two-person
Rashad.
camper. So Kevin
Hey
decided
Rashad,
to
you'd
buy
be
the van.
Francine running too.
When we arrived, we skied.
It was
Bro,
three. It was 5 people
And listened to
with
Josh
black
Brown
cloaks,
about his new van.
with all black cloaks on,
Staring at the
with
guy.
their eyes closed, staring at the guy. And how did they know where it was if their eyes were?
Bro, Rashad. Rashad, a whole
We all
weird.
parked
I
our
know
vehicles
all
outside and went into the
all
gas station
sort of
together,
hands.
which was
All
kind of
skeleton hands just
We
kind
were in there maybe
Those
4 or
were
5
not
hours.
skeleton
The car
hands.
door was
It's-
left
you
open.
Idiot.
One looked like a skeleton hand.
One was a
We had
skeleton.
huge
One of those was
shockwave
my
blast.
hands. Rashad,
Josh's van
all
was
sorts of hands just came out
There was a
the door.
huge dent on the side of Katie's car,
Out
and
the
another
gate,
dent on the
actually.
side of an old truck
It
in the
just came
parking
out
lot,
the gate like,
which
"Shut
I
up."
assume belonged to an employee. We were so panicked at that moment, so we immediately called the police. And since we were a little off the grid, the police took 15 minutes to arrive, and by then, we knew the chances of them being able to find Josh's van was slim to none. The scariest thing about it was that Kevin brought his work laptop on the trip, and I knew that Kevin didn't have a password set up on it. We waited for another 2 or so hours while the police searched the area, but they couldn't find anything. They told us to go home, and they would contact us if they found the stolen van. Kevin and Josh rode with the girls in Katie's car, while Steven and I rode our motorcycles, following them very closely.
Bro,
We didn't
whoever
stop
stole
once
my
during the
motorcycle,
3 hour trip.
whoever stole my van, I'm for the
Fast forward 2 or 3 weeks later,
Mama's
we
sick.
received a frantic call from Josh. He said that the police contacted him and that the van had been found. All 6 of us showed up to see the van, and the van had somehow been rolled on its side and was left in a ditch near the highway, about an hour from where it had been stolen. Once they got it out of the ditch and flipped it upright, the police let us look inside to see if we could salvage any personal items. Sure enough, Kevin's laptop was gone, along with a set of picture
Nah,
bombs
they
that
took
Josh
Kevin's
used to make into
laptop.
bombs.
Be quiet.
The most disturbing thing, though, was that once we got the busted driver's side door open,
They took them.
we saw that both seats were stained a deep dark red in multiple places, and the dashboard
I'm
had
never
splash
getting in
marks
the
all over it.
van.
At that point, we were really afraid of the van.
I'm never
Josh let
getting
the
a
police
van
take the van for
and getting
further
out of it.
inspection,
And
but we
it'd
never
be
heard what
stolen when I can't
or
come
who
out.
put blood on our cheeks.
Cause you have dark teeth. You gonna see red dark teeth and scratch marks.
It's not
My
red
name
dark
is Louis,
teeth.
and I live in Switzerland.
Red dark blood.
This story happened 5
Yeah, you
years
want
ago
to see
during the
blood
winter holidays.
and the van.
It was an icy cold day,
Yeah,
and the
scratch
snow was falling
marks.
continuously. So we
Icy
had to warm
cold
the
day.
house all day long with the firewood,
got me
putting it
as
into the
well.
fireplace.
Papa!
My dad told us all the time that we should take care of the
Well,
fire.
stop cussing on my channel.
However, for the next days, we didn't do anything but just played Nintendo.
And I told him to stop.
Eventually, we noticed
But he's
late
still
around
doing
9
it.
p.m. we had run out of wood.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Dad got angry. So, as a punishment, he sent me and my older sister to the local Lumberjack, who was famous in the
Oh
area.
no, I ain't going to no
His shop was
Lumberjack.
located 1.5 kilometers away from
He
our
sent
house.
it.
He
Wait,
was a
can
really
you
tall
open the
guy with a
refrigerator?
long beard and wore a black and white lumberjack shirt as a classic lumberjack. Anyway, at first he seemed very talkative. We ordered 2 bags full of wood, which were about 50 kilograms. He said, "Okay, hold on. It'll take about 15 minutes to cut and wrap everything."
It'll take 15
All of a
minutes.
sudden, my sister
In
had to go to the
15 minutes,
restroom.
you're gonna be dead.
He said that
Yeah,
he would
sure,
let her know where the
first.
toilet is, so
Okay.
she followed him.
Sean, burn this one.
I was waiting for about 15 minutes, and then I noticed the place was silent. I saw neither my sister nor the man. I called my sister's name, but there was no answer. Then I got a message from my dad that if we bought the wood, then we should come home immediately. According to the local news, the police are looking for a serial killer in the village 50 kilometers from here. Dad also attached a picture, and unfortunately, he looked very similar to the lumberjack.
No.
My heart dropped.
Sean, I'm never.
I wanted to scream, but then he came with the bag of wood suddenly. He was smiling, but I could feel that something was weird. He looked joyful. "Please, ask me where's your sister," he said and winked at me. "She's certainly not far away from you." Then I noticed the red stains on his shirt. I nervously opened a wood sack, and the pink hair clip of my sister came out. I was full of anger. I grabbed the wooden bag with all my strength and hit the man.
No,
screamed
he
and fell on the
killed
floor.
that guy's
And I pulled out my
sister.
pocket knife and stabbed him. 2 or 3, many times. Suddenly, I heard a loud scream out of nowhere. "Stop, Louis!" It was my sister. "That was a prank!" She was crying. I couldn't think straight. My head was all messed up. What have I done? I killed the wrong guy. I dropped the knife and stared at his cold body. But then I recognized that I had no time. I knew that we had to get rid of this body quickly while we were still alone in the shop without employees or customers. So I quickly looked around and found a hidden room, which was locked. We kicked the door and pushed him inside. And we were about to turn on the light in the room to find a cover, but then what I found was a huge shock. The room was full of people who had been cut in several pieces, and the floor was covered with blood.
No, I am never going
Was
to
the
kill
real
Lumberjack.
serial killer. We were so terrified that we quickly covered him with some fabric and then ran out of the shop. We ran home as fast as we
I'm never
could.
going to.
My dad asked us what happened, but we couldn't tell our parents anything. Since that day, we always made sure that we keep enough wood before the heavy snow. And I'm still wondering if the police found all the bodies at that shop.
Oh, the cops could have found all the bodies.
I don't care about that.
Me either.
My name is Melanie. This
He
happened
stabbed
when
him
I
a
was
whole
6
bunch
years
of times.
old. In 1989, I lived in
Oh, why
San
did he-
Bernardino, California. One night, after watching my favorite TV show, I decided to sleep with my mom. I knew I could sleep alone, but somehow I went to her bed and she smiled at me. While I was sleeping with her, I had a dream
Bro,
that I
I'm
was at
never
home.
going to.
It was sunny, and there were a lot of big trees around.
Bro, I'm never
I
going
was
to.
in the car when my mom was standing on the corner of the sidewalk.
This time
I struggled to open the door, but it didn't open at all. As I was pounding on the back of the car window, crying for her to help me, she just stood there, smiling and waving to me. Then I woke up, crying hysterically. Mom also woke up and rubbed my back. asking what was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to repeat the horrible dream. Nothing. I told her and fell back asleep without any more bad dreams that night. After a year, we moved to Las Vegas, and I was getting ready to turn 7 in a couple of weeks. My older brother, sister, and I went to the airport to visit my aunt who lives in Washington for a while. After finishing check-in, we went through security and got ready to board the plane. When I looked back at my mom, she was smiling and waving at me. It was the same way as in my dream. I couldn't dismiss the weird feeling during the flight. But despite the anxiety, we eventually arrived at my aunt's house peacefully. We were about to have a big party since my birthday was coming. And on my birthday, my mom called to greet me and said that she loves me. That was the last time I ever heard her speak. Everything was alright. I was so happy at the time. I was waiting for my mom to come over here and spend time with us. A few
She
days
drew
later,
boobs.
my uncle told us to sit down in the living room as he had something very important to tell us. I noticed that my older sister was sitting in the corner chair and was crying quietly. He proceeded to tell us that my mother was no longer with us. At first, I couldn't understand what he was saying. He then told us that she died from a car accident. There was nothing more devastating than that day. Everybody in the living room was crying with such piercing sadness. Now I've grown up, but I still have dreams of my mom smiling and waving at me. I hope this story urges whoever is watching this video to cherish your loved ones, because it could be the last day you see or speak to them.
I think I know why she's having those dreams.
Wow.
Her mother's ashes are in her room.
My name is Gabby, and this story is my true experience. When I was 11 years old, my family and I moved to a big house in a tiny town. Our new house was located at the highest point,
What happened?
which was at the end of the
This
town.
door.
When we bought
Have you
the
tried
house,
been
the owner
buying that
explained to
door?
us that his wife had just passed away
Tried.
due to cancer,
Get
and that the house was very
get
precious.
Oh, I forgot that I was recording. I'm sorry, guys.
Still, the owner said the house was too big and lonely for him, since all their kids were grown
No.
up and already moved
No,
to big
that-
cities.
that.
However,
thing-
during the
thing
final part
at
of the
us.
deal, he suddenly changed his mind and didn't want to sell the house. But it was too late. The owner stormed out of the office saying that it was his house and that we were going to regret it. Anyway, this was during the time my dad was sent overseas because he was in the military. So my mom, my older brother, and I had to live by ourselves for 6 months. During that time,
You guys want
we
to know
had
a
really
scary
weird
story that actually
experiences.
spooked us?
No. No.
What?
We would wake up to the sound
What?
of a goat in our backyard.
The
It would growl the
Ramsey.
whole night. The next morning, we talked to the neighbors and asked if one of them had goats, but none of them did. So at first, we just
Dr.
decided to
Ramsey's.
ignore the issue and leave it
No.
alone.
Dr.
Now, just for your information, our house design was kind of odd. Downstairs, we had my room, my brother's room, my soon-to-be-born sister's room, and a weird wide walkway that led to the backyard. And upstairs,
No.
we had a kitchen, living room,
I would
and
have
my
had that
parents'
taken
room.
out.
The downstairs was
I
underground.
would have been
and
out
the
of that
upstairs
house.
was technically the first floor. Anyway,
I ain't sleeping in
I
the
decided
no I
to
house.
sleep with my mom, so I went upstairs with my brother. Later that night, we heard a sharp scream coming from downstairs. It sounded like it was my dad's voice screaming for help. He was calling all of our names. My mom rushed out of the room and was ready to run downstairs.
You're
All of a
stupid.
sudden, she stopped at the top of the staircase and looked at us with a weird expression on her face. But your dad is still in Colombia. How could he? And the next thing I saw was my mom abruptly falling down the stairs. That moment was so horrible. It was like someone pushed her back backwards before she was able to resist. My brother called the police and I ran down the stairs to check my mom and see if she was okay. We struggled to bring her up the stairs, but we managed to make it to her room. When the police and ambulance arrived, they took my mom to a hospital and left 2 officers with us that night. I was crying the entire night, and we were so afraid. Due to falling down the stairs, Mom was injured, and unfortunately, we lost our new family member. The most chilling part was that they found large handprints on my mom's back, as if she was pushed by someone. This led to an investigation, but they had to leave the case open because no one was found in our house, other than the 3 of us. We all
that goes
went through a hard time that night,
possess.
especially my mom. She slid into depression. When she recovered, we moved the following year.
Good
However, more
job.
things happened throughout the year, but
What
not
bad
as
job?
the previous one. Just footsteps, broken plates, or similar stuff to that. We put that house on the market when we left, but no one has contacted us. One thing is for certain. I hope that we never have to go back to that creepy house again. I really don't want to go back.
Ha!
What if there's a jump scare at the end?
It was late in the evening and I was driving on the
I'd
highway.
probably jump.
I was coming back home from my friend's party. I was so
Stop
tired of that
burning
time,
yourself.
So I decided
I'd
to
burn
check into
myself.
the hotel
There
near
was
the
a-
village.
There was a
The
scream on
hotel
me.
was not too big. Seemed normal, but was kind of creepy. After finishing check-in, I got my key and the room number. My room number was 23. I walked to the hallway.
No.
As I was passing by
He
the
got
other doors, I
23.
heard a kid's giggling voice from the room number 20, which was located just 2 doors away from my room. I stopped walking, and I noticed that the door on this room looked different from the others. The door looked very old, and it had a big keyhole, and it was big enough to peek inside the room. I was actually curious about the inside, so I looked into the room, and there was a girl who was sitting on the bed with her face down to the floor. I couldn't see her face clearly because her hair was all covered. She was wearing a white dress like the 1990s style, and it looked dirty. I thought it was weird, but soon I just disregarded it.
No doubt.
So I headed to my room.
It's the ring.
And just passed out. The next morning, I was walking the hallway again. I didn't.
I'm sorry, guys, but that's gotta be it for this video. Peace out.